All right, 17-9, your final score. Kind of like deja vu there. The Eagles fall to the Seattle Seahawks, ending the season. Thanks for joining us on the Postgame Show, presented by Ricoh. Amy Campbell, Ike Reese, Fran Duffy, as always. Guys, a really disappointing way to lose, especially the big story, Carson Wentz going down in the first quarter, put into concussion protocol, ruled out. Josh McCown makes his playoff debut, but this team just unable to really get in the end zone on offense there with Carson missing from the lineup. There's, of course, a big difference between your franchise QB and a solid backup.
Yeah, and I think the difference was where it showed up was in the red zone. We know how effective this offense has been when they're down in the red zone. We know how effective he's been down there in the red zone, 19 touchdowns, no interceptions. And when they look back at this game, there were opportunities. They moved the ball late, even with Josh McCown in there. But the big difference was obviously not being able to get touchdowns and having to settle for field goals when you got down there near the scoring area. And then defensively, the big plays given up. That really was the difference in the game today. I thought the defense did a nice job of keeping them in the game, but the big plays they couldn't overcome. And then the fact that we didn't get touchdowns in the red zone is really the difference.
Yeah, I think really the two things that we saw, Josh McCown obviously doesn't have that athletic ability that Carson Wentz has, that ability to create. So, 6 sacks, I believe, on the night. It might have been 7 with that final one. A couple of those, the ball has got to come out. And, he's trying to create. He's trying to avoid some of that defensive pressure. Doesn't have that same athleticism that Carson Wentz has. Honestly, one of my big takeaways coming from this game, and as I'm sitting and watching it unfold, this was the same offense that we had watched over the last 5 weeks. But I think that's what we saw was the difference in when you have a Carson Wentz in the lineup versus when you don't have a Carson Wentz in the lineup. 9 points to show for it against the Seahawks defense. All
right, Dave Spadaro standing by at Lincoln Financial Field. Dave, you're there. You're soaking in the atmosphere. What is the temperature of the space right now?
Well, I mean, you can hear a pin drop basically on a couple of big plays here and there. And when Carson went out, a lot of the energy went out of the building. And like you all said, the Eagles so prolific in the red zone all season, 3rd in the NFL. Carson Wentz in the red zone this year, 19 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. And tonight, Eagles 0 of 3. They couldn't get off the field 3rd downs. The Seahawks 7 of 14 on 3rd downs. And that's the difference in your game. Russell Wilson made just enough magic for the Eagles miss a tackle on a 3rd down catch. They have the delay of game at 1st and goal from the 5. Derek Barnett has the roughing the quarterback penalty. No matter what you think of it, had no reason touching the quarterback there. And shades of Ricky Manning Jr., Ike, in 2003 NFC Championship game. Ricky Manning Jr. takes out Donovan McNabb, and the Eagles fall in that game tonight. Jadeveon Clowney takes out Carson Wentz on what most people believe was a dirty play, dirty hit, late hit, not penalized. And there go the Eagles' chances to advance in the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind, Dave, that was a late hit that should have been flagged for a 15-yard penalty. And it's funny that you bring up that Carolina championship game, because the moment Carson left that game and he stayed out for a long stretch, that's what it felt like to me. It felt like that Carolina championship game where the offense, no matter what they did, they couldn't get anything going, and the defense was just holding on. You brought up the red zone, and I'm wondering, Dave, I don't even recall us throwing the ball into the red zone this evening, and I'm just wondering what you may have seen from the Seahawks and what they were doing to our tight ends down in that area, whereas normally our main targets when we get in the red zone.
Yeah, they were certainly paying a lot of attention to the targets in the middle of the field. And then, Josh, not having the experience this season working with any of these players in game situations, tried to make plays with his legs, which is not the most advisable thing to do for a 40-year-old quarterback. The pocket closed very quickly around him, but certainly the Patriots well aware of the packages the Eagles ran, understanding that they were looking to get the ball to the tight ends in those situations. I think the only real throw into their red zone was the long pass down the field. It was called pass interference. When they were in the red zone, Eagles just didn't get anything, literally anything going in the passing game other than a swing pass to Miles Sanders here and there. But, like in these games, everything is magnified, and you've got that penalty on the goal line. You have the bad pass drop on 4th down that Miles Sanders catches. That's a 1st down. 3rd down opportunities the defense had to get off the field. Those things add up, and you can kind of feel it at the very beginning of the game. Carson calls an audible, and he pitches it back, and there's no Miles Sanders there. So, I mean, just plays like that kind of indicated that the Eagles just didn't have that really laser-sharp focus early in this game. They just can't make mistakes in playoff opportunities.
Dave, we'll all be tuned in to the Eagles Insider podcast later this evening. Can you tell us, is there something that you haven't brought up yet that you feel like you'll definitely hit on the show?
Well, yeah, for sure. It's all about the players' reaction in the locker room, and I'm sure it's extreme disappointment. Everybody's very proud of this football team for getting to this point, but today was a winnable football game, and in the locker room, you will hear that emotion from a team that believes just another one just got away here to a Seattle Seahawks team that, again, made just enough plays to win 17-9 at Lincoln Financial Field.
All right, Dave, we will let you get to that locker room. Thanks so much for the insight. We'll catch up with you later.
All right, guys.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. It was a winnable football game, and that's why I think it hurts especially. And Ike, especially after the narrative with Carson, he finally gets his chance for a playoff game. He has 4 attempts, 1 completion before going out with that concussion. I can't even imagine how frustrated, disappointed he must be, especially thinking, man, maybe things would have been different if I would have been out there. Mccown's number is pretty good. Completed 75% of his passes, 174 yards, but again, no touchdowns. And you could see that he was kind of hobbled there at the end, possibly, kind of grabbing the hamstring a little bit. As Dave alluded to, you can't really get things done with your legs when you get to be 40 years old. Let's get to your takeaways.
Yeah, from the season, you look at the Eagles, and obviously this ended in a disappointing fashion, but let's not overlook the fact that they are in the playoffs. And when you think about what this team had to persevere through and the injuries that they overcame, when I look back at this season, that's the biggest thing to me, is the fact that, again, this team was able to overcome some major injuries to key contributors on both sides of the ball, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Well documented about the practice squad players, guys that have come in off the streets and had to contribute to this playoff run. So when I look back at the 2019 season, it's almost a tale of 2 seasons. And the biggest thing to me is how they were able to overcome those injuries and still salvage the season and make something out of this season, where when they were 5-7 coming off that loss to Miami, that appeared to be the end of the season right there. But this team, credit to them, they were able to pick themselves up and had that next man up mentality once again for the 3rd year in a row and find themselves in the playoffs. It's just a shame that the quarterback couldn't participate a lot more in today's game.
It's almost, to me, like you're exactly right. When you look at the full season and all the players as we went from start to finish, and we've talked about the names, right? We've talked about Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey. You lose Lane Johnson for periods of time. We lose Jason Peters for periods of time. We lose Brandon Brooks at the end of the year. Nelson Aguilar hasn't played since week 11. We've had all these guys that have been out of the lineup. Jordan Howard out of the lineup for 6 weeks. They're missing all these players. Carson Wentz held it all together. He kept those guys going and got them to the end of the regular season, got them here to the postseason. Losing him with all the other pieces already out, it was a stack of cards. You pull him out from the bottom and everything else falls out. That's kind of where we were at today. If everything else was intact, I feel like Josh McCown, Doug Peterson, they could have figured it out. They could have gotten enough. If the right side of the O-line's healthy, maybe that run game is going a little bit harder. Maybe some of those receivers are making some plays on the other side. They just couldn't get it going today. It wasn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we watched this team all season and we saw all these guys go down with injury one at a time and pulling up another practice squad guy, and it's a different guy making plays every week, you kind of asked yourself, how long is this really going to work? And what Doug Peterson and these guys have done is incredible. But like you said, how much more weight can this team carry when it comes to those injuries? And at one point tonight, I think on offense there were only 4 starters that were original, like day one starter. It was 3 offensive linemen and Zach Ertz were the only people still starting. And so just how much of that can you overcome? And the fact that they overcame so much of that to this point is such a testament to the coaching staff and to these players just stepping up in big ways. Yeah,
no doubt about it. It's unfortunate that the biggest domino fell today to the injury bug, and the fact that he's able to get through the entire season and only able to make it through a series or 2 of his first ever playoff game, it was just too much. It was just too much to overcome.
Let's get to your next takeaway.
Yeah, Carson. I think when this season started, it was all about Carson Wentz. And, he was finally going to be healthy, and everyone was excited to see what he could do and could he return to the MVP form. It didn't go necessarily how we planned for his season to go, but you watch the way he finished the season. I think he erased any doubt that was out there in the Delaware Valley about his potential to be a franchise quarterback that you can win with, that can get you to the postseason. He basically put this team on his back the last 4 weeks of the season. They aren't in the playoffs if Carson Wentz isn't playing at an MVP level the last 4 weeks of the season.
Yep.
That's my other takeaway from the season, is that he was able to go out there and play 16 games and then sort of return to his form at the end of the season, the way he was in 2017. And I think that bodes well for the future moving forward. I know it was unfortunate he got injured today, but I'd rather have that type of an injury as opposed to an injury that's going to require a surgery this offseason that could linger into his ability to get prepared for next year. So that's the other takeaway I look at from this season, is the play of Carson Wentz, how he reestablished himself as the leader of this team, as one of the top young quarterbacks in this league. And if you're an Eagles fan, you got to feel good moving forward with number 11 as our quarterback.
Yeah, and this wasn't an injury where you say, like, oh, man, you bring in the injury-prone questions.
Right.
Yes.
This was, for what it was a dirty hit, like, unquestionably, like, uncalled for. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So to me, like, that whole discussion kind of goes out the window, unfortunately. And it's just, it's terrible to see it end this way.
But it's remarkable that people are bringing that up on Twitter still, because
In the narrative world that we live in, no, it doesn't shock me.
that's, I completely agree. What we've seen him do this season, and I think back to that moment where we were sitting here, Ike, after the Giants game, the first Giants game, and you said this is a defining moment in Carson Wentz's career and the best performance that he has had so far. And I was like, whoa. But that really was the turning point for me in seeing that belief start to come for him and for everyone around him.
I agree. And they were able to grab a hold of that and ride it for the next 4 weeks, got them into the playoffs, big win versus the Dallas Cowboys at home, and then having to go on the road and beat the Giants, mixed in there with a couple of comeback wins, including that first Giants game. I think he reestablished himself as a guy that when the ball is in his hands late in the game, you have full confidence that he's going to find a way to go down there and make a play. And I know hindsight is 20/20, but the way the defense played today, I can't help but believe if number 11 is out there for 4 quarters, we find a way to win this football game today.
Yeah, completely agree. Just to be able to get a touchdown,
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
probably would have made all the difference.
Yeah.
Let's get to your third takeaway.
And then my third takeaway, probably it's the most important one, and that's the way this team continues to play for Doug Peterson, the head coach here. I think he deserves votes for Coach of the Year. Probably won't win it, but he deserves votes for Coach of the Year, considering the adversity his team went through, considering how he continues to get them to play for him when it seems to be nothing to play for, and for them to find themselves in the playoffs as NFC East divisional champs. That's a direct reflection of his ability to get his players to buy in and continue to play hard and knowing which buttons to push and at the right time. And believe it or not, the fact that he had to coach a guy who hadn't played all year long in the most pivotal game of the season and had them on the doorsteps of at least being able to possibly tie this game up a couple of times late in this game, that's another testament to him as a head coach, his coaching staff, and how they're able to adjust and adapt on the fly.
To me, if they won the game, like, rename the trophy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
I'm like this Coach of the Year.
Right,
Yeah,
no question.
Absolutely. And not only a guy who hadn't played all year, but a guy who had never played in the playoffs
That's
before.
right. I forgot about that.
Besides the fact that he's been in the league 17 years, Josh McCown has played for 9 teams. This was his playoff debut, the oldest quarterback in NFL history at 40 years old to make his playoff debut. I think one of the things Doug Peterson does so well is adapt to what he has. There are not that many coaches that can continue to put every player in a situation where they can be successful. So many coaches come in and say, here's my system, let's get the guys that are going to fit my system. And they kind of like to always say, oh, I'm going to work with what I got, we'll put everyone in a situation for success. But the way Doug Peterson has adapted to whoever is on the field, and like you said, giving them they always have a chance to win when he's calling the plays.
Now, unfortunately, this team has a lot of practice at having the next man up, right? And the coaches having to adjust. especially on that offensive side of the ball. And like you said, Amy, it's just a testament to their ability to bend and have flexibility and not be stubborn and to do it on the fly. You know, Josh McCown needed time to get warmed up, to get comfortable. If you look back at that offense in the first half, it was a little more conservative. He's getting the ball out of his hands quick. They're running it a little bit more. And in the second half, they started to open it up a little bit, let him throw the ball down the field as he got more and more comfortable. Fran mentioned it's the same offense from a scheme-wise, but you can just tell the difference at the quarterback position from a young, athletic Carson Wentz to a guy like Josh McCown who's coming in cold off the bench.
Yeah, to me, I think you're right because they came out. Remember, they came out in the third quarter, and it was a rough ending to that first half. First half, kind of an ugly ending. They give up a score, then they come out. Miles Sanders got hurt in that final play, and the clock runs out. They come out at halftime. Big play to Zach Ertz, big play to Dallas Goedert. You got a big run. They start chunking plays up, and then the drive kind of stalls. They kick a field goal, but I think that kind of speaks to Doug Peterson going into the locker room, rallying those guys, and saying, "All right, guys, this is what we've got. We're going to unload the barrel here, give them everything we've got here." Unfortunately, just unable to execute in key opportunities there inside the 20-yard line.
One thing I thought was really interesting, not interesting, but the PI calls Shelton Gibson did. The PI call that he drew. The fact that it was Shelton Gibson that was the one, right? A guy who was signed to this team on New Year's Day, I believe, or New Year's Eve from the practice squad, making him the 15th practice squad player on this team's active roster.
That's wild. Crazy
now,
stuff.
not all of them spent time made the immediate transition from the Eagles practice squad. Some of them were from other practice squads, but obviously Shelton Gibson has been in the Eagles system for a little while. What can we say about just the coaching staff's ability, Doug Peterson's ability to get these practice squad guys playing in NFL playoff games and making an impact?
He said it last week. It goes to the position coaches as well because, and also the veterans on this team and the guys themselves. So it's really like a trifold effort there. But I think when you talk about all those guys, it's not easy if you are Boston Scott to say, all right, well, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to go through practice and I'm going to pretend, this week that I am Saquon Barkley, next week I'm Ezekiel Elliott, and then, oh, by the way, I'm getting called up and I have to be ready to be the change of pace back in week 13. Like, that's not easy. Deuce Staley has to get credit for that. The coaches have to get credit for that, getting them into the scheme, and you got to get credit as well, Boston Scott, for making sure that he was always ready, making sure that he was always attentive, that he was always doing what he needed to do away from the field. And that goes across the board to all those guys, Boston Scott, Greg Ward, Josh Perkins, up and down the line, offense and defense, those guys were able to get the job done.
Are other teams this good at developing the practice squad? I honestly don't know across the NFL.
I wish I could give you an honest answer.
Yeah, I mean,
I not having paying close attention to other teams, but it's rare for any team to have used this many practice squad players.
Probably most don't have to do that.
Exactly. So the fact that the Eagles have used as many as they have, because you'll get some teams that may feel like their practice squad players aren't ready to go in, are still underdeveloped, and they'll try to sign guys off the streets, old veteran guys that are sitting at home, and try to plug those guys in.
Like Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, give the Eagles a lot of credit for trying to stick with guys that are at least somewhat familiar with their system. And I'll tell you another thing, it also handicaps coaches from the offensive side and defensive side as to what they can call. Because if you're calling guys off the practice squad, they don't have all of the intricacies of the offense and the defense down. So, like in hurry up offense, it kind of hamstrings a quarterback as to what he can call. If these guys, they need to take time to figure out, okay, I line up here, I line up there. So it slows down what you can do a little bit. These guys, it doesn't seem like it happened with them, especially on the offensive side of the ball. When you look at this offense and the way they've run it, 400 yards for 4 straight games with these same guys. We've watched up-tempo offense. We've watched them late in the game in a 2-minute drill, and they don't seem as if they are limited in what you can run on the offensive side of the ball. It's certainly been effective. I think today was more or less Seattle has seen some of the schemes for the second time. So they're a little more familiar with what the Eagles wanted to do. And the fact that you're not dealing with Carson Wentz back there, that can change some of the things you do defensively.
Yeah, it did kind of seem like that, and I think Dave mentioned that as well, especially in the red zone, that they seemed like they kind of knew what the Eagles would want to do and kind of took away maybe some of their priority options. Is that something you're going to be looking at this week?
I'll keep an eye out for that when I watch the film. It was tough to be able to tell watching off TV copy,
Always.
but certainly I think when you look at what they were able to do schematically, Ike's exactly right. When you have those guys come in, that's why honestly, if you watched offensively with what those guys have had to do over the last few weeks, you bring in Josh Perkins and JJ and Deontay Burnett and all these other receivers. You can't just say, okay, we're going to go 11 personnel with 3 receivers, and all 3 of these guys are going to play, and then go 2 tight ends with 2 receivers. They're doing hockey line changes, and everybody's out, everybody's in because, all right, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, you're going to learn the 12 personnel package, and that's it. You're not going to worry about anything else. Here's your list of plays, your short menu. Deontay Burnett, you're going to learn this package. Greg Ward, you're going to learn this package. Robert Davis, you're going to learn this package, and we're just going to try and make it work. Like that's. Again, a testament to the coaches.
Shelton Gibson.
Shelton Gibson,
yeah.
You've got this one. Let's look back on the journey a little bit, just kind of putting this season in perspective. This is a team that had a 5-7 record, finished 9-7, go on a 4-game winning streak after a loss to Miami, which could have been an emotional death blow to this team. Losing to Miami, a team that was very beatable, a team that nobody took very seriously from the outside looking in. They go on to win 4 games and win the division. How do you build on this moving forward?
Well, that's going to be interesting because I think some of these young guys opened up some coaches' eyes, and so we'll see what they're able to contribute next year. I think when you look at the offense, there are some young pieces there that are encouraging. You still need to add young players, I think, at the wide receiver position. Obviously, when you go in the offseason, because you had so many injuries on that offensive line, some of the players are getting a little long in the tooth. You obviously want to shore up that offensive line by adding depth there as well. The running back position, I think Boston Scott has found a nice little role on this team. You know, the Jordan Howard thing, I'm not sure how healthy he was. He wasn't used over the last 2 weeks, even though he was active. May have been sort of a break in case of an emergency type of a situation. So the running back position, you may still look to add something there or retain a Jordan Howard because I like Sanders and Scott in there, but I still like having a big back. Guys that can run in between the tackles when you're down there at the goal line or in short yardage situations. And on the defensive side of the ball, there are some pieces there you're encouraged by, but they're also with those same pieces you're saying I'm not sold on just exactly yet. So the secondary, you're going to bring in talent there. The linebacker position, I like some of the guys there. Wouldn't mind adding another guy there. Defensive line, you got to get another D tackle in there so that Fletcher doesn't have to play as much as he played this year. And then while I like what Josh Sweat was able to do this year as an extra defensive end, I still like to see another one added to Brandon Graham, who I think will be in, his 12th year next year.
Yeah.
And Derek Barnett showed flashes. I still like you can never have too many pass rushers.
Right.
So I don't think the organization, from a front office standpoint, when they look at the personnel, I don't think they will allow the late season run to cloud their judgment as to where there needs to be improvement on the roster.
Yeah, I think ultimately we're going to go into this offseason, and next year, 2020, this team's going to look different than this team right now. That's the nature of football. That's the NFL. So trades, waivers, free agency, the draft, right after the draft, the June 1st cuts, all the way up through training camp, they're going to be mixing and matching, acquiring pieces to try and make this team better. It's going to look a lot different.
Well, and we are going to be breaking down some of that stuff. Key dates coming up, free agents to put on everybody's radar. Coach Doug Peterson about to take the podium, so we'll be breaking all of that stuff down after we hear from Coach.
I told them that I really appreciate everybody in that room for how they handled this season, for how they handled themselves, during this game, even as much adversity as we faced all year, to put ourselves in this position to win the NFC East, to have a home playoff game. That I was really proud of the effort all season, even tonight, we'll move on from here.
So do you feel like the Clowney hit deserved a penalty? The reason after Clowney hits Carson Wentz in the back of the head.
I didn't see it. I didn't say anything.
You didn't see the hit from Clowney on Wentz.
No comment. I didn't see it. I was looking to call the next play, actually.
Yeah.
So I didn't really see the hit.
So what were you hearing from the team in terms of the hit? Whether there's
There's nothing I can do about it. It's out of my hand. I mean, it's got to be called on the field. So, they didn't call it. So obviously they didn't think it was a.
Did you have any discussions with the officials about how they were officiating the game, since there were a couple penalties?
No, I'm worried about coaching the team and trying to win the game.
What changed with the offense when went to Carson and Josh?
A little bit. We eliminated some of the motions. We just kind of got back to some of the core plays, some of the things that Josh was comfortable with in the run game and the pass game. And just, we did some good things. We just kind of stalled out in the red zone a little bit tonight and had opportunities, but just got back to some of the core stuff with Josh.
What's the most remarkable thing about being able to be within a score of a very good playoff team with the personnel, especially the offensive personnel that you had on the field at the end of the game? To you, what's the most remarkable facet about that scenario?
Just for me, it's about just how resilient our team is and giving ourselves an opportunity like that to be down one score against a really good football team in a playoff game. And it's just it's remarkable for me to see our guys battle, how the defense kept us in this football game, and offense moved the ball, but we just failed to score. But to still be within a score of at least in a 2-point conversion to tie the game just shows a lot of character and resiliency of this team.
Doug, I'm sure you're disappointed for everybody in that room, but Carson in particular, 4 years and the last 8 plays in the postseason, that's an awfully disappointing blow for him.
Yes.
And how would you feel?
I feel for him. I feel bad for him. I mean,
Have you spoken to him?
I just briefly saw him in the dressing room after the game.
How was he? What did he look like? How was he responding? Probably not going to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll let him speak for it, but I'm disappointed, for him, because I wanted this for him, obviously, and I think a lot of his teammates did too, and the organization did. I mean, he's battled through a lot, but we'll learn from it. We'll move on.
You were expected, was this a different game if Carson was healthy?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I would say yes. If he's healthy, with the game plan that we had, I think so. But it's hard to speculate.
What was the mechanism for getting he didn't come out right away? What was did you get a call from upstairs?
No, I just had Joe Opella, one of my trainers, came up and said they were just going to evaluate Carson, and defense was on the field, and that was it. And then they came to me later on and said that they were going to take him into the locker room and evaluate him further.
So was the spotter, the independent NFL spotter, that told you guys?
I don't know all of that. I mean, I just know because I'm in the game. I'm coaching the football game, so I just have the trainers are communicating with me, and they just said they're just evaluating Carson at the time.
On the second to last fourth down in the fourth quarter, did you consider kicking a field goal there, or were you thinking you needed a touchdown regardless?
I was, but I was also trying to maintain the aggressiveness there, try to get the first down and stay on the field and score.
The third down defense tonight, what was the issue?
Yeah, just obviously Russell had broken some runs there too, and so we're trying to keep him in the pocket. At the same time, when he's holding on to the ball, it's kind of hard to hang on to the coverage a little bit. But just guys got some separation and they made some plays, and credit them. I think they had a really good percentage on third down. I think 8 of 15, something like that on third down, and probably the story of the game, really.
Zach Ertz played, Miles Sanders played, Brandon Graham came back. You had the same thing happen, I think, a couple of weeks ago, where guys who might have stayed out came back. What does that say about the level of commitment, from some of your marquee players, and how does that affect the rest of the room?
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they're tough guys. They do everything they can to get themselves back on the football field, and they want to play, and they want to help their teammates win. And it just shows, I think, the character of each individual, the type of people and the type of men that we have in that locker room and on this team. And it's a credit to them to do everything they can during the week to prepare themselves more mentally than physically, obviously, and then put themselves in a position to play in this game. So it's hats off to those guys that battled through some injury this week and got themselves ready to play.
So take us through the final play. Josh McCown gets sacked. What was the play call there, and from your vantage point, why did he have to aim it there?
We had 2 plays called, and we alerted. We got to the second play. Actually, he alerted it to the second play, and
At the line of scrimmage?
at the line, and I guess not everybody got the alert, and so we had a couple of busted assignments on the play, and it's just unfortunate, especially on a 4th down call, to try to take advantage of and get the first down. So something we'll learn from and get better.
2 more, please. There was an alert earlier in the game. It looked like Carson when he pitched back to Miles and it went by him. Was that another one that wasn't picked up?
Yeah, that was again a miscommunication. Miles either didn't hear or see the signal for the check and just missed it. Just made a mistake.
As you're on the sideline and you find out Carson's not coming back, what's going through your mind and what's your message to Josh?
My message to Josh is, we're gonna still maintain our aggressiveness, best we can. And I just told him, I says, well, as we look at the call sheet, I'm gonna eliminate some of the motions and shifts and just try to line up and let him see the defense. Felt like we had to utilize the run game a little bit, for him and help him out, and then get to some of the play action stuff, which we did, and it was successful. And really trying to get him into a flow, get him into the rhythm. It's been a while since he's been out there, and just try to get him into that rhythm with Kelsey, obviously, and then the flow of the game for himself, and just trying to get back to some of the core stuff that he was comfortable with.
And your thoughts when you heard the Carson news?
Excuse me?
And your first thoughts when you heard that Carson was not coming back to the game?
I was into the game. I was getting Josh ready to go, and I felt for Carson, but at the same time, we still had plenty of football left, 3.5 quarters.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm thinking about last year, the loss to the Saints, and the guys are coming into the locker room, and I was standing right there, and I watched Coach hug every single one of those players. And so no surprise to hear him start this press conference saying, I told them how I was so proud of them. These are players that play hard for this coach. They feel loved, and they play hard for him. Really cool to hear that emphasized even there. What else stood out to me was how he talked about the resilience of this team. To be down, the defense kept us in it. The offense moved the ball, just couldn't get into the end zone. Let's talk about the defense a little bit, though, because I think what we all can point out are those 3rd down numbers really killed this Eagles defense today. Seattle 8 of 15 on 3rd down, 53%. A lot of those were 3rd and very long.
Yep.
Where you had back them up, and then they would break loose for a big play.
And it's a shame because Fletcher Cox was dominant in this game. Without Brandon Graham for a good chunk of it, number 91 was unblockable for most of the night. So to have that effort almost wasted by some of the big plays that they were able to have offensively. Again, you mentioned 8 of 15. This was a team that, especially over this stretch, we had just bragged about their prowess in situational football.
Mm-hmm.
Red zone offense, red zone defense, 3rd down offense, 3rd down defense. The Eagles were top 5 in 3rd down offense and red zone offense on the season. Today they go 0 for 2 in the red zone. They go 3 for 11 on 3rd down. And the Seahawks were 8 of 15 on 3rd down, 1 for 2 in the red zone. I mean, when you're talking situational football, that does it. We saw that field goal block a minute ago from Vinny Curry. That's the closest we got to a turnover for the Eagles defense. Certainly a big play, but they were 0 for 2 on 4th down offensively in their own right.
Yeah, I look at the big plays, right? The big plays, I think, really hurt them. Obviously, on 3rd down, you can't give up
Gotta get off the field.
almost 50, over 50%
Yeah.
on 3rd down. But this team had done a nice job of keeping the ball in front of them. They hadn't had the ball thrown over their heads in a few weeks. Seattle obviously missed on some opportunities the first game they played against the Eagles, so they knew that those things will be available if they got those same looks, and they were able to capitalize today. As bad as DK Metcalf played in that first game, and he had a few drops in that first game, he was outstanding today when the ball was in the air and he made the big plays. And so when I look at the defense, that's what I think about when I think about what hurt them today. Fran brought up how dominant Fletcher was, and I thought Malcolm was right there with him. with the way that he played today. And when you're down some of your best players, the ones that you have available to you, they have to take their game to the next level. And I thought 91-27 on the defensive side of the ball did everything they could today to keep this team in the game, and they did, because Seattle struggled getting the ball in the end zone. They got the big play to DK Metcalf for that touchdown to give them 17. But other than that, they didn't necessarily get in a lot of in scoring range. And the defense was the reason why we were still in this game late in the game.
Yeah, absolutely, crediting the veterans there. As we are waiting to hear from Josh McCown, we will be having him in a few minutes here whenever he's ready to take the podium. Let's look at some of the unrestricted free agents on this current Eagles roster. Of course,
long list.
Long list of guys. You know, they always say about a third of the roster is different from year to year. Some of these guys, veterans. Anything really jumping out to any of you here?
Yeah, good. There you got 3/4 of the starting secondary there
Yeah.
with Jalen Mills, Rodney McLeod, Ronald Darby. You've got one starting linebacker in Kamu Grugier-Hill. You've got a couple of running backs. Obviously, we know Darren Sproles announced that he will retire, but Jordan Howard, obviously. Every position looks like it's touched on there. From quarterback all the way back out to secondary. Every position is touched on. Both of Carson Wentz's backups, Josh McCown and Nate Sudfeld. You've got backup offensive linemen there. Obviously, the bodyguard, Jason Peters, as well. It's there's a lot of names on that list.
It's going to be interesting. Going to be an interesting offseason, of course. You know, some of these guys, you can't imagine them anywhere else, but that's always, you know, a part of it as well. Interesting. I'm interested to see what happens with the quarterback situation, especially with Nate Sudfeld, you know, having some options there. I'm interested to see especially what might happen with him.
Well, the funny thing, when I look at that list of 15 players, and obviously we don't know what the Eagles are going to decide to do as far as who they're going to bring back or not. Jalen Mills may be the only player on that list that I saw, and Big V, because Big V has been probably your top backup tackle, left and right side. So losing him isn't some small thing. You know, he and Jalen Mills are the guys that I think probably have the best chance of possibly being retained, although Big V may see a market out there for him since he has so many starts under his belt. So the Eagles may not be looking to pay that price tag for a guy like Halapuli Vaitai. But that's what happens in the NFL every year. And this team coming into the season was the third oldest team in the league on average. When you looked at their roster in the last 3 years, they played a lot of football games. And because they've been a postseason participant, what you typically do is you try to keep that window open. That window is probably closer to closing with this group of guys than it is a window that you're going to remain open and try to retain as many of those guys as you can. So it'll be business as usual in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles when the free agency market hits, because guys, they tend to find new addresses. The Eagles can't pay everybody. And these guys are going to be looking for an opportunity to cash in as big as they can. And like I said, the Eagles can't pay everybody. And there are also guys on their roster right now, I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking to try to extend. So you could see that as well.
When does that typically start to happen? When's kind of the beginning of that process?
The extensions?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, as far as I know,
it's been happening throughout the season with several guys.
We've seen Zach Ertz, we've seen the offensive linemen rather.
Yeah.
We've seen them extend some of these guys. But certainly, there's decisions up and down the depth chart that they're going to have to try and make some of those decisions on. And some of the guys that we haven't even mentioned yet. But obviously, the key dates starting just in a couple weeks here.
Yeah, friend, this is your draft season beginning January 18th. The Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl, the Pro Bowl, of course, not a scouting event, but then we get into the Combine, we get into free agency, of course, and wrapping things up there with the draft, April 25th, when you talk about all the changes coming to the roster. I love this time of year because I'm a huge nerd about the next guys coming in, and I know you guys are right there with me.
Yeah, we'll be heading down to the Shrine Bowl in January, in a couple weeks now, a week from tomorrow.
It is January.
It is January. A week from tomorrow, we'll head down there. We'll be doing all that coverage for PhiladelphiaEagles.com for the Journey to the Draft podcast. So if you're not already subscribed, you can go subscribe to that podcast now. We'll be doing all the live action for Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, Combine, all those events. But Look, in the meantime, this hurts. I mean, we're 8 days away from that. So I think ultimately when you look at this team, I think some of the things that we've already touched on, we talked about the resiliency. We've talked about how there's going to be decisions to be made. There are players now that we could say, like, we feel good. I talked about it. There should be no question about Carson Wentz. There should be no question about some of the other key players on this team. We saw Fletcher Cox go all out after he got hurt a year ago in the divisional round, and it took him some time to get back. I know the sack numbers were not super high, but I think what we saw was a dominant force up front, especially in the second half of the year down the stretch. Thankfully, they put it on display tonight because there are a lot of games where he plays like this and you see it on film and it doesn't always get talked about because it's not talked about. One of the things that Chris Collinsworth did in this broadcast that was good was highlight the play of Fletcher Cox.
Yeah, I think it was really fun to watch him play tonight, especially with Seattle. We talked about they have some backup offensive linemen, a backup center there that Fletcher Cox just absolutely took advantage of. And you saw Jim Schwartz really scheming to give him that matchup one-on-ones because you could just see that the Joey Hunt, the backup center for Seattle, could not handle Fletcher Cox and the strength and the weight of that. It was a lot of fun to watch him. Is that something that you're going to be able to break down a little bit more moving forward?
No question. We talked about it this week actually on Eagles Game Plan. A lot of the things they did this week were the things that they did last time that these two teams played back in Week 12. So getting Fletcher isolated on the center, Joey Hunt, using Nigel Bradham, using Malcolm Jenkins, those guys up close to the line of scrimmage. Malcolm had another sack in this game where it was a similar kind of scheme. So everything that they're doing with those guys, look, and those are the things that you're hoping to be able to continue to do. You're always going to kind of tinker with the scheme and make some changes. You don't want to carry too much over from year to year, but that was one of the big things that we saw this year. I thought they did a really good job defensively of creating those one-on-ones in passing situations. Didn't always result in sacks, but those guys were able to get home. I thought they did some good things schematically, not just today, but this year as well.
Yeah, and let's not forget, you're going to get Malik Jackson back.
No doubt.
Next year,
It's
right?
a good call.
So you add him in there to a Fletcher Cox. Obviously, you hope that he can get through the season. He's a year older, but, Malik Jackson is a guy who's been a former Pro Bowler. He's a Super Bowl champion. So we were looking forward to seeing what he and Fletcher Cox could do, pair it up.
That was supposed to be what this defensive line, that was what this team had been planning for, bringing him in here.
Yeah, and you're going to need that. And when I look at what the guys were able to do up front with just the guys they had available, I mean, Fletcher Cox, not to say that he needs some type of help in order for him to be a all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber player. He's typically the one who draws the attention and allows his teammates to shine. But he's also a guy that if you put a player who also you have to pay attention to, now Fletcher's going to get those one-on-one matchups. Now he's going to get freed up from time to time. And if nothing else, today showed you that there's a lot of football left in Fletcher Cox. You started hearing little rumblings as to whether or not is his best days behind him. Will he be able to come back from the injury? It's closer to 30 than he is 25. I think the last couple of weeks shows you that, when he's healthy, Fletcher Cox still has a lot of good football left in him.
Yeah, no question. I think when you look at, some of the key players on this team, guys that they were able to extend, you look at Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson, the right side of that offensive line. You bring back a first-round pick in Andre Dillard, a guy that you can now, build this offensive line around. They extended Isaac Seumalo last offseason. Jason Kelsey obviously still there at the pivot. That offensive line is a strength for this team, moving not just what they saw this year, but moving forward. That's something to be excited about. When you pair that with what we saw from Miles Sanders, you have number 11 back there. You can continue to add more weapons. We'll continue to see that. But when you have that core, all the best teams are built trenches and quarterback, right up the middle. Start inside and build your way out. That's the building block. Those are the building blocks for this team.
Well, let's not forget Matt Pryor getting some meaningful experience this season as well. Maybe possibly having Jordan Mailata back next year as he was on injured reserve. And then a couple other young guys, Nate Herbig, Sua Opeta, also guys who are being developed by this team and by Just Allen.
They're always going to be adding offensive linemen because they know that there is not a lot of talent at the offensive line position in the NFL. Those guys are seen as very, very valuable. So while you can, people say that about quarterback all the time, right? What did Andy Reid always say? We want to draft a quarterback, if not every year, every other year. It's the same thought process now in today's league with offensive line because you don't have a whole lot of talent with that around the course of the NFL. I know that Eagles fans get a little bit, frustrated with the offensive line at times. I'm telling you, you watch around the league,
it's tough.
It gets a lot worse.
Yes,
Like
it
not
does.
a good
It's a lot worse.
situation.
This is one of the best in the league.
This Eagles offensive line looking forward is one of the best in the league without question.
Deepest as well. And the other thing I hear from covering the college game so much and from the draft process is coaches are saying guys, especially on the offensive line, are less and less NFL ready coming out of college. A lot of that is because of the college offenses with the spread and the, different types of schemes there that don't necessarily prepare offensive linemen. And because it's such a developmental position, it takes so many years to really build that technique. I think you have to give a lot of credit to the offensive line staff here, especially Jeff Stoutland, who is one of the best developers in the league as well.
It's the opposite of what it used to be when you came out. Like, it used to be, oh yeah, offensive line, they're safe. You take that guy in the first round, he'll start for 15 years. Not the case anymore. But no, I think when you look at how this team is built, there's a lot to be excited about. There will continue to be changes as there is with every single team. But excited. I mean, it's a fun time of year. This is the time now where we say, okay, we sit back, we reflect. Obviously, we live with this loss. You take the team rule and you say, all right, we live with this for 24 hours. We take this through Monday. Now let's take a look and how does this team improve moving forward? How can they get better across the board? That'll be the discussion over the next few months, not just in this building, but in all 32 other buildings as they try and get better throughout all the different phases of the offseason.
Well, and we have one more big college game coming up next Monday as well.
Yeah.
That should be pretty good. A lot of pro prospects going to be in that matchup as well. I think we're about a minute away from Josh Mccown. Were you going to add something onto that about the draft conversation?
Well, I just think, the draft is always huge around here, and fans get excited about the draft because you're bringing in young talent, and we all think we're scouts and GMs, and, we spend the next, 10 weeks looking at these guys and going over tape and trying to figure out where we could sort of implement guys that we like to try to improve this team.
Yep.
But they have to hit on this draft, right? I think there's been some nice young players they've taken over the last couple of years. They got to continue to do that. You got to continue to replenish the talent on this team. Those are what the good football teams do. Carson's salary will be a difference maker as you move forward. So you have to get younger, cheaper guys that you can continue to develop and have them play to surround him with, because it becomes harder to build a roster full of free agents when your quarterback is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league.
I think that's a good point, and we've seen a lot of teams go really far with a quarterback on a rookie deal because they're able to spend a lot of money on the pieces around. So that changes kind of how you would build a roster, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at some of the best teams in the league, they have found ways to say, okay, if we're going to give the quarterback a lot of money, look at the team that's on the other sideline, right? The team we just played and we just lost to.
Yeah.
A lot of money put into Russell Wilson.
Did he win a Super Bowl on a rookie deal?
He did. He won the Super Bowl on the rookie deal.
Yeah.
They had to reshuffle the deck a little bit, and now you look at the success they have and continue to have. Tom Brady in New England, another example.
All right, I believe we are getting close to hearing from quarterback Josh Mccown as he made his playoff debut today. Let's hear from Josh.
You were pretty emotional coming off the field, obviously. What's kind of going through your head after that game ended and everything you went through this?
Yeah, just the finality of playoff football and just being done and not getting it done, and just those things hurt, and a lot of people put a lot of time, energy into this game, and just hurts when you don't get it done, and we want to be there and help rally the team and get going, and we just didn't get that done, so it's just just hurt for that.
I know you got two Miles that Miles had to put down play.
Oh, that's just me. I just got to make a better throw. Miles is a heck of a player, and he's gonna be a special player in this league. I love that kid, and just got to give him a better ball, and give him a chance to run. And I didn't do that. We nailed the protection call and everything about it, and just didn't get the ball on him, and that's on me.
Josh, it had been quite some time since you were out there. I mean, how did you feel when you finally took the field?
I mean, I felt good. I felt good. I think procedurally some of the things in a little bit more of an advanced game week. Different than the preseason. I think some of those things, was trying to get up to speed and handle a little bit better. But I felt good. Doug's always, excellent in the headset with just helping with different things. So I felt good. It was just when those things happen, you're kind of flooded with a lot of different emotions. Obviously you don't want to be on the field under those circumstances, but then it's like, okay, here we go, we got to go and got to get going. And so kind of started a little slow. Wish we got going a little bit faster, but the guys around me and Doug and the coaches helped me settle in.
At what point did you know something was up with Carson? He was having a rough time, and that you could go in.
Right. Well, we talked on the bench, and and obviously he expressed concern and told me to stay ready. And then when you're dealing with these things as a player, it's tough, and it's tough. Carson Wentz has put a ton into this season, and to get to this moment, and especially the things that he's gone through. And it's a tough call, and he's sitting there, not feeling right, and obviously, knew he needed to get checked, and so I think for the state of our game and the questions that come around those type of injuries, I think it's a step forward, and it's progress because it's the right thing, and he was smart by getting checked and doing those things and making sure he was all right, and so you go through that, and then you just you turn the page, and as bummed as I am for him, then you got to go do your job and go try to move the team.
What perspective did you have on Clowney's game on Carson?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fast game. Guys are playing hard. Always you hate to see guys when a guy's going down to add on and to finish on top, but those guys are playing hard, and without seeing it on video yet, it's hard to make a full comment about it. But you always hope there's no ill intent on those stuff, and I don't believe that to be the case. But it's just unfortunate.
How do you know the delay of game, or was it just a matter of guys being lined up wrong?
Yeah, I'll take that one on me again, and just getting in and out of the huddle better, and that's what I mean. Some of the stuff, in an advanced game plan, in this type of week, the management of the huddle and getting in and out a little faster, we could have done a better job of, and so I'll put that on me.
Josh, on the last fourth down play, Doug had mentioned you had a couple options. Check to one, maybe there was some busted assignments. What did it look like from your perspective?
Yeah, well, he's exactly right. We had an alert on the play, and we alerted it. And again, if it didn't get communicated clear enough, then that's on me, and we didn't get that done. But they did a good job of covering the part that we wanted to get alerted, and the guys that we were the intention of the play. They did a good job of covering those guys, and so try to step up and buy a little time and hopefully get something open, and we just didn't get that done.
Josh, I saw you after the game. Can you explain your emotions after you come off the field in a situation that's obviously just incredible for you?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, and everybody that sets foot in that building over there, NovaCare, puts a lot into getting this thing done, and when you come into that game and put everything you can into trying to win the game, and it doesn't get done, it's just painful. It just hurts, it just sucks, and from my standpoint, it feels like as a quarterback you want to do more, and you feel like you can do more, and you start replaying these plays in your mind of where maybe you could have been better, and so I always have that perspective of I could have been better, and you feel like you let a group down, you let those people down that come to that building, and that's a sick feeling, it's a hurt feeling, and you don't want to have that, and so it's just a reflection of that.
Josh, what's this year been like for you, kind of coming out of retirement? Do you want to keep playing after this year?
Man, I've had a time of my life. I told those guys in there, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that they called me, and Alshon and the guys that hit me up and coaxed me to come out. I've chased this my whole career, and have been in moments where we were 5 weeks ago, where you're coming home on a plane ride from Miami, and you feel like all is lost, and man, this thing's it's a dark place. And then you're talking and you're going, can we win all these games and get in, you know? And I've been in those moments a few times in my career, and we don't get it done, you know, and it goes the other way. And man, what an honor it was to be in that group and watch Doug lead this team, watch the veterans in this locker room lead this team, watch Carson play the way he did down the stretch. That's special, and more than anything, solidifies what I've thought in all those moments of just if the collective, if the belief of the group can rise to a certain level, we can run the table, and we did that and we got in, you know. And unfortunately, that ended the day, but this year's been nothing short of special for me. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned so much from so many people, and just thankful to be a part of it. And as far as the future goes, we'll see. You know, I haven't made any decisions yet. I'm gonna get with my family and you know, talk with them. Obviously, I've retired once, so I know how to do that. So we'll just see. You know, I don't know yet.
Did you have any moment during the game or in the shower right now that you just played your first playoff snaps in 17 years of career?
Yeah, you know, I'll probably reflect on that later. And again, you know, probably with a sour taste, but thankful. Yeah, thankful. Just, you know, wife and my family have moved around a lot and been a lot and been there for me, and so, and mom and dad, and so to go out there and get to play in a playoff game was special, and I can't thank them enough for their support. And it was it's a heck of a ride. I left it all out there. I know that much. It's different playing at 40. So your body talks to you a lot, and you know, I think more than anything, I think I'll reflect on that later, but it was fun to be out there for sure.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are any dry eyes out there, I don't know what to tell you. An emotional Josh McCown reflecting on his journey, saying, I've had the time of my life, and really tearing up there when thinking about his family and the support and just how much they've moved around. Again, 17 years in the NFL, I believe 9 different teams, first playoff game, but you also can sense the disappointment that they didn't get the win today and that was more important to him than his own experience. Fran, let's just reflect on this amazing player and the year and what he's meant to this team this year.
Well, I think just like the last couple of minutes there that we just saw, to me, it kind of encapsulates that, you know, for a lot of fans, these guys are maybe lines on a TV screen when they're playing Madden, like a first name, last name, OVR rating, or, you know, they're on your fantasy football team, but they're people. I mean, they're humans. They're people. They've got families. They've got friends. They've got issues. They've got highs and lows. And to me, you know, that showed the human element of the sport.
Yeah.
I've been in that position, and it wasn't after 17 years. It was after 9 years, but I knew I didn't have much left in me. And it's ironic that it happened right in that stadium, the final game of the season back in 2006, as I was with the Falcons and we lost to the Eagles. You sit in that locker room and you reflect after that game is over with, when you know your season has ended. And watching Josh up there talking, I'm sure today was bittersweet for him. He's a competitor. He's been in this league a long time. But, you know, playing that position, he does not want to come in and play under those circumstances. You know, he's been here as a tutor, as a mentor for Carson, someone for Carson to lean on when he comes to the sideline, almost like an extended coach. And to have to go out there knowing that was Carson's first playoff game as well, and for him to only play a short period of time, Josh, as a fellow quarterback, feels for Carson also, but at the same time, he knows that he may have just finished his last game in the NFL playing his first ever playoff game. And so there's a lot of emotions going through him right now because he may not put that uniform on again. So as a player, when you know you're at the end and you may have just left it all out there on the field, it's kind of hard to find the words to put it in the right words. And I can only imagine Josh being in the situation that he's in as a backup quarterback at 40 years old after 17 years. You know, he can't stand up there and talk about the fun he had out there playing today, just getting an opportunity to play in his first ever playoff game because he's so locked into the team-oriented goals. And so, man, that was, you could feel it.
Yeah.
I'm standing there talking.
You could feel it, absolutely. And
he's only been here 1 year.
Right. Well, and he left, the future open-ended, kind of jokingly saying, I've already retired once, so I know how to do that. But it's different playing at 40. Your body kind of talks to you a little differently. I would like to point out also that Josh McCown was the last 40-year-old quarterback alive in the postseason this year. Who saw that one coming? All right, we are going to now check in with Mike Quick, who went one-on-one with head coach Doug Peterson to reflect on this game. Let's take a look.
Coach, the obvious thing today is you lost your quarterback early in the football game. But aside from that, give me your impressions of today's game.
I think today's game kind of sums up our season.
Yeah.
With all the adversity that we faced in this game, with losing Carson, Brandon Graham came out, Miles got nicked up, even our backup quarterback got hurt, Josh got a little banged up in the second half. It just kind of sort of symbolizes how our season went. And but also what I look at is how these guys hung together. Our defense battled, kept us in this football game, special teams, and the guys just, continued to be resilient time and time again. And we just came up a little bit short, obviously, with some fourth downs, the red zone, but all things that we'll look at and, obviously move forward and get better.
You've lost a lot of guys, as you said, throughout the season, but how difficult is it when you lose a Carson, and what are the adjustments that need to be made?
Well, you plan all week, obviously, for your starter, and the whole game plan is kind of at your disposal with Carson. But, with Josh in there, he's a veteran guy. He's played. He hasn't played in a while, but at the same time, we had to kind of eliminate some of the moving parts a little bit that we had, the motions and shifts, and just kind of line up the offense and just let him see the defense, utilize the run game, let him feel comfortable with that, and then just mix in some of the play action as we win. And it worked for us. We moved the ball, but we just failed to score.
It's a defense that's familiar with your offense. Did that make it even more difficult? Because especially in the red zone where they were able to shut you down on a lot of plays. Yeah,
and a lot of it was just our failed execution down there. But at the same time, they understood probably what we were doing, and it's a credit to them. I mean, it's a good defense, and rightfully so. They're in the postseason as well. So just something we gotta look at as we move forward this offseason. We'll study the whole thing and get ready for next year.
You mentioned your defense holding them again to just 19 points and giving you a chance to win this football game. Over the last few games, and especially at home, they've been really good. Tell me why.
I just think they won. The crowd has been unbelievable. Our fans have been unbelievable during this stretch, during this whole season, and then our defense. I mean, I don't know, playing in the league, playing at home, playing together. When it's loud like that, communication is obviously a premium for the offense, and when they can't communicate, it helps us get off the ball and do some things. And our defense has played lights out, really at home, and we just got to be able to put it all together though, and try to figure out a way to win.
Do you take a little break now, or do you go right into scouting? How do you handle this?
Yeah, I mean, we'll wrap up the season and everything tomorrow, and then we're right back into evaluations, and obviously that it just starts over again, and build to the draft, build and plan for OTAs, and then get ready for 2020.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Quick.
All right, thanks, Mike. As Coach reflects on today's game and on the season, we are taking a quick 90-second break. On the other side, we have the Ricoh review. It's a Fletcher Cox play that you will not want to miss, a breakdown. We will see you in 90 seconds. Thanks for watching the postgame show presented by Ricoh. Today's Ricoh review features Fletcher Cox and, man, him just showing how absolutely disruptive he was on the Seattle Seahawks opening drive. Fran Duffy has more.
And we're going to start things off by looking at the dominant performance from Fletcher Cox. This guy could not be blocked in the first half. Really kept the Eagles in this football game. That play of that defensive front seven, really the guys in the back end as well in the secondary making some plays. But let's look at what Fletcher Cox did on this opening drive. And we're going to see here, they nearly come up with a huge play on the second play of the game. Here's number 91, Fletcher Cox, lined up in the B gap between the right guard and the right tackle. He's going to explode upfield with a quick first step and beat the block from the right tackle, Jermaine Ifedi. He's going to eventually get to the running back here, Travis Homer. But the guy who helps set him up is his counterpart here on the other side, Tim Jernigan, who's going to be really stout on contact, and we'll let this play run. And you're going to see him take on the double team right there. So he gives up no ground. He does not give up any space here on the double team. That causes Travis Homer, the rookie, to kind of chatter his feet just a little bit. Now you can see here, Fletcher Cox, he's already well on his way to defeating that block from the right tackle, Ifedi. That explosive first step brought him into the backfield. Now he's going to take this, put his foot in the ground, and explode to the ball carrier, let this play run. And you're going to see Fletcher Cox get the ball on the ground here. Unfortunately, bad bounce, lands right and back into the hands of Travis Homer. Doesn't erase the fact that Fletcher Cox dominated there on that play. Really kind of a sign of things to come for number 91.
I could watch that play again and again and again. All right, we are taking one more quick break. Stay with us for 60 more seconds. All right, as we wrap up the postgame show presented by Ricoh, we want to thank you all for hanging with us all season long. What a wild ride it has been. Ike, what has been your favorite part about working with me?
Well, the fact that we added another knowledgeable voice to the table. I've had fun all year with you. You've been a joy to work with, honestly, and you've done a great job as the quarterback of the show.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, we got to have somebody to keep myself and Fran in line.
Look, you make it easy. I just got to serve it up to you and let you go. It has been an absolute pleasure. It has been so wonderful to have you with us all season long. And as always, PhiladelphiaEagles.com has you covered for everything moving forward. Until next time.
We'll be back.
We'll be back. We'll see you. Thanks so much.